All right, good morning, everyone. It's Monday. We're going to kick it off. We are live streaming with the one and only Cody Davis and Dylan Pettyjohn. Cody is having some technical difficulties, so we'll see how long he'll be here, or how long he lasts. Unfortunately, he was going to try and walk through a property today, but we don't think that's going to happen. And we got Dylan here to promote something super cool that just got dropped today. But morning, fellas.
Good morning.
I don't know how Dylan snuck on the rookie podcast. Dylan's not a rookie anymore.
Oh, Cody throws it right out there. Okay, so real fast, and Dylan, what got
Uh,
released today, and what is Cody talking about?
yeah, so I went on the Rookie podcast around August. The episode just released today. And what I wanted to do was talk about commercial real estate on the Rookie podcast because I feel like whenever I hear people talk about commercial real estate, they tend to be a little bit older. And I wanted to get on there to talk to the people that are around Cody and I's age and just say, hey, it's actually not that scary. Check out commercial real estate.
Very cool. Cody, were you ever on the rookie? You were on the regular one, right? Your episode.
Yeah, I didn't even know that we were launching that one. I thought that was practice.
No.
I had I had COVID back then when we were recording. I just woke up and we started, and I was like, okay, when's the
Oh,
real one? That was the real one.
oh, geez. All right. Well, I did put Dylan's the link for the YouTube, the Bigger Pockets episode, so go check it out. Subscribe. He'll put his name out there, support him. So that's going to be awesome. But yeah, so I think a lot of people have reached out to me. They are trying to maybe go from residential to commercial, and they're just struggling with evaluating deals or getting over a certain hump of what is the biggest difference or what are certain key things you could be looking for. So I think these are the two perfect guys to bring on here. So Cody, maybe you can give us some thoughts on that.
Well, the key understanding is what you're going to do with it. Because if you just want to buy something and sit on your hands and wait, and you're doing the math, making sure it cash flows, a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex is going to be your best option because you don't have to refinance the debt. The value is based off the comps and the quality of the asset. It's very simple. And commercial is simple, but in different ways. And so I like the differences in commercial because if Dylan has a 10plex and you have a 10plex and I have a 10plex and we're all next door neighbors, if mine brings in more rent, it's worth more than yours more often than not. And so it's more so valued based off of performance. And I'm a competitive person by nature, so I like performance driven metrics, and that's more my cup of tea. But you make the asset do better and your balance sheet does better.
I would also argue, I think it's just easier in general to do commercial real estate because there's more money involved and the banks are valuing the asset instead of you personally to be able to service the debt. That's what I really liked about it. I realized running a 12plex was easier than my partner running some of the single family houses. At least it felt like to me because there was just more cash flow to go around when problems happened.
I know Brian is here, and Brian is the one that is trying to maybe looking to scale up from single family to commercial. So, Brian, if you did have some more questions, shoot it in the chat. But I believe both of you didn't even do single family homes, right? You guys went straight to commercial. Is that correct?
You can go
Yeah,
first or you want me to go first?
I did it backwards. I bought a 12plex, a 12, a 6, a 38, and then some duplexes. And now I own 5 single family homes. No, yeah, so 5. I would not do that again. I did it to do it. You got to do it to learn. And it's one thing to say, oh, I love multifamily better. But having done both now a few times, I do like multifamily better.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I started with the 3 and then I went to the 12 and we're trying to find something else in that same size. I'd say roughly 10 to 30 is what we're looking for right now, but we'll see how that shakes out. I haven't bought a single family house yet. I've just not wanted to, just from like just running the numbers on so many single family houses over the years and then looking at apartments. I'm just like objectively, if I can already run this thing like this, it makes more sense to just double down on that right now for me at least.
Okay, so both of you, but you guys both have evaluated single family homes and commercial. So I guess the biggest thing is like what are like maybe some key indicators or things that are like blind spots for someone maybe trying to go from single family to commercial when they're trying to evaluate a deal? Cody, you can go first.
Your liquidity on a sale is going to be lower. Like your access to money, it's going to be a little harder process to sell a multifamily building that's above 4 units. In the size we're talking, like the really big institutional stuff will trade because it has to trade, and that is what it is. But on the mid-size stuff, there's not as many buyers yet, and the buyers who are looking want a deal. So even if something appraises for 400,000, you're not going to get 400 grand like you would on a house. You're probably going to get 380, or you're going to get 400 with concessions. So they're not as liquid from a sales standpoint. But on the refinance side, I'd say they're more liquid than residential because the bank's looking at, well, what's the property doing? And I don't have a job. I could still go get a couple $1 million loan against a building, whereas I couldn't do that on a residential deal if I wanted to cash out and I didn't have any income.
Dylan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say I really just mirror that. I really like the fact that, with the, at least with the commercial side, I'm able to quickly add value to a property. In the case of ours, for example, we added more value to the property that we were able to tap on an equity line or refinance if we wanted to, than we actually put into the deal in the first place, which I thought was crazy. I just I can't say I haven't seen people do that with single family houses because I've seen flips, I've seen burrs and all that, but it just felt like doing it at a much larger scale because we did essentially 12 of them at the same time, and the values asset. The value is based off the income, which I think it was objectively better in my opinion.
I mean, like, how do you guys get like zoning information, and how do you guys get all your data for like these commercial properties when trying to evaluate them? Because I feel like the single family homes, it's so much easier to get the information as far as, there's Zillow, Redfin, you can find these properties so much easier. So like, where do you guys go, or how do you guys determine these numbers, or where do you get them from in a sense?
Well, you can see what it's zoned for. All the cities have a zoning map online, and you've got the property tax assessor, which is going to say, typically there's brackets, like it could be single family residence, or it might be duplex or multifamily 4 and less, or multifamily 5 to 9, multifamily 10 plus. And then you can look at the zoning maps and figure out what the density allowance are. So like if you have an allowance of 10 residences per acre or 20 or whatever the number is, it can dictate what you can do with that property as well. And sometimes you find weird things, like I've got a building that you couldn't build again if it burnt down. It's grandfathered in because they're not just going to make the owner tear it down, but it is not an allowed use in that location at this point in time. So
Dylan, anything to add on to that?
Yeah, I would say for the because I saw Brian's question and he said his main concern is unknowns. I think something really important to do when you want to get into this space is one, try to talk to a few brokers and just have them send you like the OM and the P&Ls for the property. You can go on Crexy or LoopNet and get some of that information just by requesting it. And that way you don't actually have to bug somebody because you're not 100% serious at that point. But what it's going to get you to be able to do is look at an actual P&L of somebody that's running an apartment building and see what all expenses are within that. Like the first time I saw CAM charges and like legal and all that stuff, I'm used to running just my triplex. So, well, and even with the 12plex I bought, they didn't have any of that stuff because it was just written down on a piece of paper what their P&L was. But when I started looking at some of these bigger buildings and seeing, things like CAM charges, for example, I had to like research every single line item because I'm like, what is this? What is it? And it's like, okay, they're taking care of the parking lot and stuff like that. Like a lot of the unknowns can be figured out by just looking at what somebody's already doing in that space, provided that it's a similar size building that you're looking for.
Yeah, so Brian also adds, I guess he's not sure if I fully understand the key thing to consider since they cost more, small mistakes magnified. Like Cody, you have any thoughts on that?
Well, you need to walk every unit and take notes, take videos, lots of photos. People don't document what they do enough. So I would take a photo of every unit, do a video walkthrough. You can check the sinks, see if the toilets wobble, see if the floor creaks or if it's squishy in the wet spots. It's a lot of simple stuff, but like you mentioned, if you miss stuff, then it's going to add up really quickly because more units is more money typically. So I'd just do your walkthrough and check everything you would with the residential stuff you're already looking at doing. And then it's just a little bit more footage to review and make sure you feel really comfortable with it. Because if you think about it from a building perspective, if you own a fourplex, what's two more units added onto the same building? It's not that different. The financing's different, the valuation method is different, the management, it's not too different. I guess it depends on the location. But just document it like you would a quadplex. And they are going to be more expensive because there's more units, but it's also more valuable because there's more income. So don't get too worried about the higher price thing.
Dylan, anything to add to that?
No, I actually thought that answer was great. I wish I had something to add to it, but felt like Cody covered everything there.
Yeah, and I think like Flavio touches on something that why a lot of people like to get into commercial or move up to commercial at some point is Flavio says, I own all singles and it's not fun when you have three empty.
Yeah.
Okay, but to be fair, it's not fun when you have a handful of multifamilies and you have three empty either. I mean, it's math is math, but the difference is Flavio's single family rentals probably get 50% more rent. That's a made up statistic. But I'm just saying he gets a higher percentage of rent per unit than I do on an apartment. So it does hurt a little bit more.
I do think that is something that'll push people into the multifamily space though, because they look at the fact that, oh well, if for example, I have single family, one unit's vacant, I'm paying the mortgage unless I was responsible and have reserves sitting on the side right now. But when you look at a duplex or a triplex or a quad or a 10 unit, for example, there's a I'm thinking of the 10 unit, for example, but there's a lot of units that can be vacant provided that you bought it right before you actually have to end up coming out of pocket for anything. And I think that's what they're looking at. But yeah, I could see it both ways on that because my partner that owns single family houses, like our apartments get around 800 to $1,000 a month. And some of his single family houses get like 1,800, $1,600, $1,700 a month, and people stay for years.
Flavio has a question for Cody. It says, how do you analyze cap rate with all units being empty? This is a sixplex.
Well, you'd analyze it the same way if it was full. It's just being empty. You're probably not going to offer the market cap rate. So if it's completely empty, what I'm going to do, and I just did this on my Soap Lake sixplex, so we're talking similar numbers here. I look at what are realistic rents I could get for the project when it's completed. I also have to budget for, okay, I'm going to pay what they have an idea of price in mind. I'm going to have to figure out my make ready costs. All that stuff comes into account. But what are the projected rents? What do I expect my operating expenses to be? So I talked to the utility department and they said, well, when it's full, it averages about $250 a month per unit for all utilities. So I multiply that out, it's $1,500 a month. And then I look at, okay, what are the property taxes likely to adjust to after I buy it? Add that to the operating expenses. What's my insurance quote from my broker? Add that in. What's my management fee? Even if I'm self-managing, the biggest difference between residential, and commercial, even if you're going to self-manage, you need to budget for a management fee because when you go to sell it or refinance it, they're going to add that in. So budget for the management fee, budget for the maintenance, and I'm going to take the gross adjusted income, your total income for the year minus your vacancy factor of 5%, 7%, whatever it is in your market. Subtract your operating expenses, and that's going to be your projected NOI. And that's the number you have to work off of to come up with your price. When I bought the 38 unit way back when in 2021, it was a negative cap rate, meaning it wasn't empty, but there was so many people not paying that the operating expenses were higher than the gross income. So there was no price I could have paid and gotten a positive cap rate. So I had to underwrite based off of, okay, well, what if I could get these to $600 rents? What if I could get them to $700 rents? And I'd figure out if the valuation worked out for the price I paid. And today, because I did that, I didn't just walk away with like a lot of people. My loan amount is greater than the price I paid back in 2021. Like Dylan was talking about with the BRRRR. You can BRRRR big deals, mid-sized deals, small deals, but your best opportunities are typically gonna come when it's distressed or non-performing, like the deal you just described.
Before we get to Brian's next question, I do see Lynn tuning in. So Lynn wants to congratulate Dylan. And if people haven't heard, new people tuning in, Dylan's Bigger Pockets rookie episode dropped today. So go check that out. Go show him some support over there. And also go check out Lynn's episode while you're there too. She's also featured on Bigger Pockets Rookie. I know she's working on something with Violetta. So I think they might be coming out with their own maybe weekly podcast type of recording, live streaming thing. But Brian now also asked, what would you be looking for in a PM beyond what you would for single and small multi?
Do you want to go first, Dylan, or you want me to?
Believe it or not, I've never hired a PM. I still self-manage everything. I feel like they do have to have experience with apartments, though. Like, I don't know that I'd want to hire somebody that's just used to managing single-family houses to go manage a 10 or 20 unit building or more.
Something that I've been working on with my property manager that they need to be aware of is the occupancy piece, because your biggest expense is going to be vacancy. And so what ends up happening is a tenant has an issue and then they have another issue, because it happens if you're buying apartments. They don't like the tenant next door, or they don't like something in the unit, it broke and it didn't get fixed in a timely manner, or it's a recurring issue if you have an older building. And so these things pop up and the manager tries to move them to another unit that they manage, or the tenant wants to break their lease and the management's first line of defense is, okay, well, this is what it would cost, rather than try and fix the situation. So as an example, when I have a tenant issue, like maybe they're doing a move in and the cleaner did a poor job, or it took a little longer, they want to break their lease, rather than letting them break their lease, which of course they can do, I offer them a concession, which could be a few $100s off of next month's rent. Whatever it is to keep them in to avoid vacancy. Because if you give someone $500 off rent, people may say, well, that's a lot of money for the inconvenience. But what's even worse is they break their lease, you keep their deposit. And then, so basically you have next month's rent covered, but you got to fix the unit again. You're gonna have to do your touch-up paint. You might have to do more stuff to get it make ready to show. It's not an issue for living there because they're living there, they're happy. But if you got to go do a bunch of fixes, it's going to cost you more than the $500 you're going to give them. And then you're going to have the turn time if it takes longer than the 30 days to fix their unit and get it leased. So I just like a manager who is focused on occupancy and not necessarily trying to max out the rent. I heard a saying early on in business that said if you're 100% occupied, your rents are too low. You really want to stick between the 92 and 95% occupancy in a standard market. And that's where you know your rents are good and you're not charging too much, but you're at market.
Interesting. Josh Burdick says, hire a commercial manager that looks and talks like Ben Mala.
That'll do it.
Brian also asked, oh, go ahead, Dylan.
I was going to say, I had a question for Cody, and I think this could help with anybody that's wanting to buy a commercial property. So when I look at deals specifically on like Crexy or LoopNet, I noticed that a lot of them price the deal at pro forma, even if their apartments are nowhere near what pro forma is and not really accounting for any of the things that need to be done to get the apartments to pro forma. Where do you find yourself landing when you're offering on deals? Because what I can pay versus what performa is generally a substantial number, because I'm actually accounting for the fact that, oh, if we expect rents to be there, well, I'm going to have to do all of these things. But also, I don't want to pay for all of the work that you don't want to do to just go and do the work myself and then get the property to the current value. What, because essentially I think you should make the upside if you're buying it, doing work to the property, and increasing the rents. Whereas a lot of these people seem to price it at like what it would be if the rents were that.
I go back and forth on that. When you're starting and you're starting to build your commercial multifamily portfolio, you do have to account for all that. And you really do have to make sure, hey, if I'm squeezing this lemon, I get all the juice, right? That you want it to be more favored in your benefit when you're building up a company, because that's how you get to the point where you can accept lower returns. Because a lower return on a lot of money is better than a high return on not a lot of money. Once you get more established, though, on the flip side, I'm willing to get closer to their number. Something else that I heard in the business is, if you want to own it, you got to buy it. And so if you want to own the whole neighborhood, there's a point where you just have to pay it if you really want it. And I'm not recommending that or advocating for people to go do that, especially when they're getting started. But there's deals I'm looking at today that are a little bit richer than I would have ever liked to be. And I'm not going to make a whole premium on the appreciation up front, but it gives me the land control of the neighborhood. And those brokers who are listing it on LoopNet and Crexi are looking for that typically when they're listing it that way. But typically when you get an OM from them and they're underwriting, you just have to throw it out. You look at it and then you throw it in the trash because it's all garbage. Like there's a 20 unit in my market, and they listed it at a 7.8% cap rate, and they didn't account for any expenses. They listed the expenses, which were too low in the offering memorandum, but they just took the gross scheduled income without vacancy, without expense, divided by the purchase price, and they came up with a cap rate. I'm like, that's garbage. They don't know what they're doing. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. Like that deal, I just say, okay, it's not going to sell. I offered them $1.8 million. They listed it for 2.5. I also offered them 2.5 if they held a contract with 10% down and a nominal interest rate to make the deal work. There's always a way to make it work, but usually you got to throw out the broker's underwriting because it's garbage.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed. Well, I mean, you have to look at it from their perspective. Like, what are the incentives? They're incentivized to sell the thing. So, of course, they're going to make it look as good as possible.
Yeah, at the expense of making themselves look bad. Because if you can't do math as a broker, that's a tough scene.
So Cody's Wi-Fi is holding up pretty well. So those of you tuning in, unfortunately, Cody was going to try and walk through our property today, but we scratched that idea with some Wi-Fi issues. But he's holding up so far. So, but if you are tuning in, like I said, Dylan's Bigger Pockets rookie episode dropped today, so go check that out. Go jump to Cody's YouTube channel, go subscribe. Dylan's YouTube channel, go follow them there. But Brian also has another question. He says, are there any hidden expenses you found in your early deals?
Yeah, for sure. Electrical. And this was the issue of you don't know what you don't know. So insurance forced me to upgrade all my electrical panels at my 13 unit. A few years in, which is good, because if they did that in the first year, I would have been toast. But they made me upgrade. I had Zinsco panels, and they're like, okay. When insurance tightened up, everyone was claiming stuff on the east. Like, all right, you need to do this now. And so I had 90 days where I was getting canceled. And so that really sucked. Makes you get creative when you don't have the money. But insurance compliance issues, you really want to run all those by your insurance broker early. Like, hey, this is the panel, this is the plumbing, and that way you don't have any surprises.
On that point, though, let's say when you were buying it initially and those changing the panels came up at that time, do you think you still would have done the deal? And as if you look back now, like, is it still been a great deal even though you had to change the panels?
It was a great deal, absolutely. It cash flows wonderfully. However, I would have had to structure it differently on the front end if I had to do that up front. I had an inspector, they recommended replacement, but my insurance said, look, this is fine. We can bind insurance. And I had insurance for a few years. But when everything tightened up, this would have been a couple of years ago, they forced me to do it. And I've owned that property now for 6 years. So like I had a few years of good run, but basically that cash flow ended up, the cash flow I would have saved basically paid for those.
I
And now
think,
it's still performing.
yeah, I think that's kind of what my takeaway is. It kind of like things are going to happen, right? We just got to figure it out. But at the end of the day, you hold it long enough, you get into it at a certain price, and it for the most part, I mean, it's gonna end up in a good position for the most part, as long as you ran your numbers pretty conservatively in the beginning. Let's see. I see Frank tuning in. If you haven't got a chance, go wish Frank a belated happy birthday. It was his birthday on Saturday. I believe he turned 52. But go give Frank a shout out. Let's see. Was there another question I saw from someone? No, I guess not. Um, so Cody, I believe for your single family homes though, you're looking at it more. That's you're flipping them though to generate chunks of cash to invest in commercial. Is that kind of how it is?
Some. I've bought 2 flip houses. Sold one a while ago. I'm working on selling one next month. And I have 5 rental houses, 2 of which are on one lot, and it's got a bunch of extra land. I'm going to build a fourplex on the back. And then 3 of them were basically burrs. One of them pulled out all the money and then some. So basically pulled out the total down payment for the 3. I bought it in one LLC with fiance and friends out of state. So we did out of state investing and single family. Wouldn't do that again. It was really fun in the moment. They cash flow just fine. There's no money invested at this point, which is also nice. But they don't do anything. I mean, in 20 years, because it's a 20-year AM for a couple of those, like they'll be paid off and it'll be fine. But I'm probably going to try and sell them because the cash flow you can get from it's in Indiana and Tennessee, so like you're not cash flowing a lot even if they're paid off. It just doesn't compare to the multifamily that I've put myself into.
Dylan, any chance of you going down that route also, like single family homes to generate chunks of cash?
I don't know. Part of me thinks eventually it would be easier, but then at the same time, I think about like, okay, so the thought process I went through was like, what if I sold everything that I have now and just bought single family houses in cash? And then I ran through the math of that because what I was thinking of was, well, I don't have to take care of anything that comes up for the tenants generally because, like, as far as landscaping or anything like that, like they take care of that. I'm only notified of plumbing or electrical issues or and that kind of thing. So I was thinking it would be more simplistic, but then at the same time, just running the math, I'm like, I wouldn't make nearly what I do now having the single family. Like a total single family portfolio, even if it was paid off. And yeah, I would have substantially less units. I do think it would end up being less headache, but then I really need better product because I can't go out and buy like 60s 70s houses because I feel like those will, or even 40s for example. I think that's better example for Indiana. um, like those will end up having problems. And the thing with those, unlike apartment buildings, everything is different. Like one house might be gas, one house might be all electrical. They have different water heaters, different furnaces, everything like that. They're spread out across town, whereas with an apartment building, it's all centralized in one place. I've gone through the mental model of that. I just feel like at the end of the day, apartments make more, and they they are a little bit more work, but I think it's worth it.
What about from like a like ADA or fire and safety compliance type thing? Is that something you guys thought about in the beginning, or does it make it more challenging to run deals and numbers?
Well, a lot of the older buildings, I mean, there's definitely compliance issues. A 12-plex I used to own had these itty bitty windows because it used to be a motel, and they had never been converted. And so, as long as there was no issue, it was fine. But as far as like being in compliance with the city, because it was non-compliant, but they weren't going to make us replace it unless there was an issue. So those were things you wanted to budget for over time, but a lot of it was grandfathered in, built in the 30s, 40s, 50s in Moses Lake. But yeah, now I look to try and fix a lot of that stuff. It becomes more of a concern as you start to build up your portfolio than it was when I was first getting started.
I haven't had to do anything centered around ADA. I do have Corson come out and check my. I have fire extinguisher. I have like 6 different fire extinguishers on it. I want to say 3 or 4 on each side, so it might be 6 to 8. And then I also have fire alarms that they test out. I believe it's once a year. But that's really all I have to do in terms of like maintaining the building as far as insurance and just safety concerned. Um, it's really not that bad either. I think it's like $400 or $500 a year, so it's nothing crazy.
What about parking? Like, is parking as important? I think like single family homes, you can kind of get away with it to some extent. But how do you deal with parking situation? Is that something you look for? Very important in commercial spaces.
Yeah, if it's inconvenient to park, you're going to have more turnover. One of my first new construction deal, it's 7 townhomes side by side. The parking is subpar, and there's a bunch of 7-plexes side by side. They have higher turnover than some of the other newer builds in town because their parking is not that great. If it's inconvenient, they're going to remember it every day, and they're going to be thinking about where's the next place I'm moving. So yeah, you want to make it as convenient as possible when you can. And so something that I had to do at my 39 unit was asphalt the front because the parking situation was terrible. There was lots of potholes, and it looked awful. And so I had higher turnover in the front building. I asphalted the front building, and now I have higher turnover in the back buildings that aren't paved yet. Didn't have the money to do it all. So yeah, parking is super important.
Yeah, I would say from a cost perspective, that's something that I look at when I go tour a property too, because a lot of these buildings have pretty decent sized asphalt parking lots. Um, so that's something to familiarize yourself with of how much that costs if you need to, you know, I mean, you can seal coat it a lot of time if there's not a ton of holes, or you can patch holes and seal coat it. But if you had to like redo the asphalt parking lot, it's relatively expensive.
Flavio is asking, have you guys replaced the roofing on a plex? A lady replacing on a fourplex. She paid 80K. Bad trusses.
Wow.
That's nice.
Yeah,
A lot.
I've definite. Well, if you have to replace all the trusses, I mean that might be accurate. Depends on the size. Yeah, I've replaced a lot of roofs. I spent 120,000 doing some roofs on my 12-plex. I took it from flat to pitched. So that was all new trusses, asphalt shingle. Had to build up because it's a concrete block building with stucco. So we had to frame up a structure around the edge of both the buildings. It's 2 6-plexes that face each other. And then you roll out the trusses on that. And that was like 120 grand, so 60,000 per roof. And the flat roof was 73,000 for a motel, 30-unit motel. So 80, could she have done better? Yes, but it sounds like she already spent the money, so it is what it is.
So what was the thought process from going from flat to pitch? You're saying, was that something necessary, or you had that in the plans?
I look at economic useful life. And so an economic useful life of a building with a flat roof is less than that of one with a pitched roof. Even if it's new material, it could be a new membrane like TPO, it could be torch down. But with a pitched roof, your useful life will go up. And when your useful life goes up, so does your amortization for most lenders. Example, if I've got a 20-year economic useful life on a building, typically I'm going to cap out at like a 20-year AM. Some lenders don't care, but some definitely do. And so with the new pitched roof, that took a building that only qualified for 15-year AM to 30. And that dramatically changes the amount of money you can borrow and your cash flow position and all that.
I think Lynn is, she's like 120,000. How long did something like that take, I guess, start to finish?
That project, well, I bought it in 2020 and I did the roof in 2022. And I think the project took, I don't actually remember. It was a few weeks, maybe a month. I actually don't remember the start to finish time.
Let's see. No, no, no. Yeah, I was trying to be nice about Frank's age. He is 62. I said 52, but Frank says 62 is the new 22. So I think Cody and Dylan are barely past 22. They're both like what, 20?
I'm,
What are you both like 25?
yeah,
$27.
I'm a couple years older than Frank, 25.
Jesus. Well, if there's no questions, how about this then? So I have I don't know if you remember me talking about this, Cody, back when you were in Hawaii, but so I have a partnership with my family on a single tenant commercial space. We got offered purchase price of 3 million for it. Um, I am the minority. I own the lease amount, so I have really no say in what we do. My mom wants to avoid the tax burden whatsoever. So for her, selling is not really on the table. But she always stresses out when the time to fill the lease. So like when filling the tenant, she always gets stressed out because the property taxes for the year come out to like 40. Is it like 40,000, 50,000 for that property? Things like that. So um, we did present the people that put in the offer if they want to do some sort of seller finance, possibly. So, just roughly, if you maybe wanted to run maybe, better cash flow monthly payments from them, and like some options through the term, like how would you kind of just easy way to run it? I mean, you're off the top of your head.
Yeah, there's a few ways I would consider it if I were selling. First one, I'd look at doing, like, if you really want to make sure they don't pay you off, I'd do a yield maintenance clause, which you see in a lot of commercial stuff. It's not a prepayment penalty, but the way yield maintenance works is a prepay. If I owe you $1 million and there's a 3% prepayment penalty, I have to pay you 30 grand to pay it off. With yield maintenance, you do it based off of time, not money. So if I want to say, well, I want a 7-year yield maintenance, you're maintaining your yield for 7 years. So you look at what 7 years of the interest would be, and that's their payoff. So if they pay it off in year 3, they have 4 more years of interest they have to pay you as a penalty. It incentivizes them to stay in the deal and not cash you out. That's the first thing I would look at. The second thing I would look at is breaking up the notes. So you could do a $3 million property. you could have $2 million of that fixed for 30 years, balloon in 20. That gives you some predictable income at whatever rate you need to be. And then you could do $500,000 as a second seller finance mortgage that's due in 5 years. Or you could do a million, and 500. Like, you could break it up into a few different notes to stagger your balloons. And then you could do yield maintenance on each of those so that they're not just trying to prepay those early. Or if they do, you get a big premium. But like, if you sold a $3 million property, you have $1 million at 6% due in 20 years, $1 million at 6% due in 10 years, and $500,000 due in 5. That staggers some payouts for you over time to break out that tax obligation. And since they're amortizing, you're going to get some of your principal pay down in the foreseeable future, and you're going to get a lot of interest in the meantime. And it allows that buyer to come in and stagger out their payoff obligations, so they don't have to come in with a $2.5 million loan in the future. They can pay it down as they make more money.
Interesting. All right, I'm gonna have to rewatch this after, or we can have a call after this. But let's see. Joe V. His question is: Mark is a okay. He just says Mark is a big single family guy. Can Dylan and so Dylan and Cody, you're on the clock. Can you give me a 30 to 60-second pitch to convince me to move to multifamily? So who wants to go first, Dylan or Cody?
I've been going first this whole call. It's
All right, Dylan.
Okay. Well, I think from a vacancy perspective, you're going to have a lot better time in multifamily, just optimizing. So you never end up having to pay for the mortgage. The cash flow is going to be significantly higher. If you're looking at commercial multifamily, the asset value is going to be based on the net income of the property. So as you increase the rents, the value of your building is going up. We're not just banking on the neighborhood's value increasing. We're actually forcing the value of our property up. I don't even think I need 30 to 60 seconds. I think that's good enough.
All right. We'll see. We'll see what Cody has.
Well, my whole reason for multifamily is you diversify your incomes in a consolidated location. So you want to diversify your incomes from single family. You have an issue with one house. That house is basically a non-performing asset at this point. Similar to what Dylan said, you get multiple incomes, one consolidated location, which creates simplicity. If I die and I have 100 houses and I have the same profitability as 100 units over 5 20-plexes, what I'm looking at is, how simple can I make my universe for the person who's going to take it over when I pass? That's the reason I like multifamily, because you can make a lot of money in single family. You can make a lot of money in commercial, a lot of money in multifamily, apartments, storage. But what is the simplest one to pass on to your heirs or your spouse? And I've found that consistently it is multifamily apartments. Even if the profit's the same, it's less stress because they can afford a property manager, the capex, the payments, and still provide consistent cash flow.
I like that. I think that's also why I think I've been seeing a lot of things recently about people not necessarily getting out of real estate, but trying to, towards the end phase, putting stuff more in like stocks or something where it's easier to transition, like you're saying, on to their heirs or whatnot, and that way it's easier to divvy up. Because even like my parents, my mom's family, they had disputes over how to deal with some of the real estate my grandfather left for them, and it's just like bickering, and everyone wants to do a different thing with it, right? So I think with whether it's in cash or stock, it's so much easier just to be like, this is yours, this is yours, this is yours, and then go on your way and you figure it out.
Yeah, and you wouldn't do it for you. You'd do it for, like, if you love what you're doing and you love the single family and it's profitable, there's no reason to change it. The only reason you would do it is to simplify it for whoever's going to take it on when you pass. You're building systems for them.
I feel like, well, one, it's very difficult to know when you're going to die. So, but I'm thinking of more or less a number that once I hit a certain net worth number, I know dividends will be more than enough to support my lifestyle for the rest of my life. So at that point, I'll probably own no real estate besides my single family house.
And what's that number?
I'm thinking it's somewhere between 10 and 20.
And what's that going to get you?
Well, what I look at from a dividend perspective is around 300K a year. If it was just in, like, for example, SCHD, it's a dividend ETF. It's about 3 to 3.5%. So about 350,000 a year. That's on 10 million. On 20 million, it's about 700,000 a year. And then I think that is something that you can easily, like, it's just a transfer of an estate to somebody else. Like, I feel like it's much more simplistic than uh, having all the real estate. But also another thing that I've heard of guys doing that I think could be really helpful is if you do have something simple like Cody has. Maybe Cody has a document that says, hey, you should sell this asset, you should sell this asset, pay off this one, or something like that, to essentially like tell them what to do to simplify the portfolio when you're not there, so it is the easiest thing possible for them to run.
Kobe Hurst has some questions for you guys. He says, Cody and Dylan, tell me more about your guys' journey and how you started, and how did you quote your first property deal with your interest in going into the commercial game?
Well, my first one was a 12 unit, seller financed, zero money out of my pocket. It was a seller financed first mortgage of 90%. So it was about $1 million. And it was a hard money second. And the philosophy behind the lender on that, interest rates were like 3%, 4% back then. They were lending the money at 12. And the deal I made with them, they were basically a hard money lender, a money shark that worked. It was a client of someone who worked at the office. But if I failed, which was in my pitch, it was like, I'm probably going to fail, but you'll take over this project. And it's a great return. They funded in second position, and I would just sign it over to them if I couldn't pay them back. So that's how I got my start, a little less conventional, but it was seller financed with the hard money down payment. It still cash flowed about $800 a month. I still own that deal today. I've paid off that hard money lender and actually added a unit. So it went from 12 to 13 units. And that one is probably my strongest cash flow relative to the debt I have. There's properties that cash flow more, but they have a lot more debt.
I started with a small multifamily, so I bought a triplex. I actually bought a conversion. I would probably never buy one of those again, just because of some of the issues that can come up with those, such as like noise going between different apartments because they didn't design it properly when they were doing the conversion, and just various other things. Also, with those buildings being older. And then I was living in that house hacking, and I saved up the money to go buy the 12plex. We did do conventional 25-year financing with a local community bank. We didn't get creative on this one. I tried. The seller was not for it, and I wasn't going to not take the deal because it made sense with conventional debt too. I just wasn't able to be the majority partner in that case because I had just bought another building, and then 6 months later I was buying another building. So I ended up having to bring in my partner, which Mark, you've met. We had him on the podcast, and he put down 80% of the down payment, but I was still able to get the deal done. And sorry, my phone is getting blown up for some reason. I got to turn this thing off.
You literally just went on a podcast. I imagine that is why.
Yeah. What podcast were you on? Where did your video drop today?
It's on the Bigger Pockets Rookie, and it's episode 620. Just released this morning. But I'm not used to that thing going off like that. It was like one person texting me, so I have no idea what it's about.
They said congratulations, like, but they spelled it out CON.
Probably, honestly. It's like, what the heck is going on here?
Josh does say, yeah, depending on age, health of my parents, is it better to wait to get stepped up? And that is a thought. It just part of me, and even like a 1031 is something on the table. It's just I think I told Cody this before too. My brother and mom are definitely like in that Dave Ramsey mindset. So even if we were to 1031, I don't know if they'd be willing to take on any debt to, step up to on the next property or get a bigger property. So that's some of the, I guess, maybe problem in a sense.
So on that topic, because I actually did that. I had a partner that they wanted to separate stuff out, and so what I did is I wrote them a promissory note. So instead of selling it on seller financing, they seller financed their equity to me, and then I 1031'd that asset by myself and bought something bigger and used the cash flow from the bigger deal to make the note payment and cash flow to myself.
Oh, maybe we got to talk about, because I was looking that up if I could 1031 my portion, and it was saying it would. I mean, it's possible, but
It is.
there's a lot of other hoops to jump through. But so okay, but part of me is also, and I think, you know, seeing Cody's transition, he is trying to get out of a lot of his partnership type of things more for having control and sole ownership of his properties. I think that's also kind of where I'm at in a little bit, is where if I can just either somehow get out from my brother guys, then I can do what I want in a sense. So yeah. But like I think Cody also told me at that time we had coffee was, you know, you're in a good position. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a good position to be in. So it's kind of like just, you know,
Let's use real numbers though. So you said you could sell for 3 million. Is there debt?
nope.
So if you sold it for 3 million, and let's say after the fees, you walk away with 2.7, you take 10% off for brokers and all that. You'll probably net more, but 2.7 million. If we divide that out by ownership percentage, and I don't need you to share that, but on your end, you divide out that 2.7 million by ownership percentage, and you say, okay, this is what your guys' net value is. And if you wrote them a note for that and said, look, you guys don't want debt, I am comfortable with debt, I will write a promissory note to you guys for that equity position, and I'm going to take this 2.7 million, I'm going to take it and I'm going to go buy a conservative $6 million income property. I'm putting a majority of the money down, going to have a really strong cash flow. That cash flow is going to help me build my net worth over time, but the cash flow is what's going to pay you guys. It's going to give you consistent income. You're never going to have to worry about a vacancy, and I'm just going to make that payment to you. And now you get 100% control of that equity. You're going to have excise tax because you're transferring over 50% and you're a minority partner. However, you get control of it, you pay the excise tax. Now you get to take 2.7 million and you can be really conservative. And since you have no debt on the actual title, you could go 1031 into another property and pay cash, or you could 1031 into a property low leverage and put 50% down, buy something for 5.4. You could go buy an $8 million building. You could do a value add, like buy it for 6, put a little bit of money into it, get it to be worth 8, and then BRRRR and pay them off. There's lots of ways to do it, but you could own a big income property by yourself. And I did that on a smaller scale. I took a $600,000 asset and bought a $1,650,000 asset by doing a note to the partner for their equity and then taking that equity and buying a bigger building.
Interesting. How much would I have to, well, it's more just, I don't know if I want to deal with my mom and my brother.
Well, you would deal with them because if you have a promissory note, it goes into note servicing and it's on auto draft from your account. You don't worry about it. They get their payment. And the interesting thing about your position is, yeah, you're gonna have to pay excise tax to get 100% control of the asset. But once you sell it, you take 2.7 and you invest it into a conservative deal. Even if you put 50% down, you're probably only gonna earn 5% on your money. but 5% consistently because it's an income property on $2.7 million, it's $135,000 a year of free cash flow. And I'm very confident that's more than the free cash flow you guys get right now. That's after everything. That's after tax, insurance, maintenance, vacancy, management, because you're not managing a $5.5 million deal. And if you buy it in a higher cash flowing market rather than an appreciation market, maybe you get 7%, 8%. And 8% on $2.7 million, what is that, 56,000 plus 160? You're over 200 grand a year in cash flow. That's definitely more than you're getting right now.
A lot to think about now.
Good problem.
Yeah, no, like Dion says, right? It's always difficult to make a decision when you have a lot of good options. So, let's see. There was a few more. Let me see. Yeah, hey, proof. Oh, yeah. Sorry, man. Neither of these guys do crypto or Bitcoin. So sorry. You always miss Nick, lead pray huddle on. But yeah, Brian, who is looking to get into bigger commercial stuff, but he does. I think he's mentioning SCH Schwab dividend paying ETF. I
Oh
think
yeah.
he's all yeah.
I like the balance. Like something I want to get to at some point is balancing out my stock and real estate portfolio because I just like the liquidity of stocks. But
Just dollar cost average and start putting cash flow away. Because what you don't want to do is put like 100 grand into stocks or 400 grand into stocks, when you do a cash out refi, and then have it plummet. Like if you dollar cost average starting now, you will balance out over time, and you can increase your monthly contributions or your daily contribution, whatever you want to do. But don't just think, oh, I'm at one point I'm going to cash out refi and then throw that money into stocks, because that could work, but that also is a really high risk.
Yeah, I was thinking just like monthly, just starting to put some money back in the stocks, because I used to be relatively balanced until we did the value add to some of these buildings, and now it's like 90-10 or something like it. It's not even 90-10, it's like 95-5.
Well, I have zero stocks, so you're more balanced than I am.
Nice.
I have like one stock remaining, a dividend, Bank of Hawaii. Was it Bank of Hawaii? Yeah, that's it. It just gets dividend reinvested, so I don't even touch that. I did look at one retirement account that I still have that I can't liquidate it until I actually retire. My deferred comp, and I don't know. It's growing though without me putting any. I stopped contributing to it, but the market is doing so well that it just keeps going up. Hey, Val's here. Charles says, yeah, keeping the trust together creates larger outcomes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do, but to like Cody, I mean, you kind of maybe that was the vision in the beginning to doing partnerships and acquiring more, but it seems that you're kind of transitioning now to consolidating things and simplifying things, like you're saying, right?
Yeah, before I really did a bunch of partnerships, I had 30 rentals. So there was a base, and then I did partnerships and bought a couple hundred rentals, so the portfolio really blew up. But partnerships can get you where you want to go faster if faster is your goal. But building a stronger foundation is better than building a faster one, in my opinion.
Vodka duplex, Charles. I don't know what that means.
Man, I need like the sushi duplex.
Oh, I see what he's talking. Okay, yeah, a duplex to pay for his vodka. All right.
Was that Dion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a fourplex.
I was supposed to say something, but you're not walking through the property. Like I said, people tuning in. Yeah, Cody was going to try and walk through a property he was looking at recently. He was having some Wi-Fi issue, but I was supposed to bring up while you're walking through it that what a pickle you're in right now, or what a pickle this looks like. Someone told me to bring that up to you, or use that term.
Jason Ewert.
No, Dion actually said to say
Oh.
that. Yeah, he says, "Do you hate pickles?" And he says, "You always say this is such a pickle."
Oh, no. My buddy Jason and I, that's just a joke. I don't know why. Um, Trying to think back to what it would have been. Like when I was a kid, and maybe it came from this. My dad asked me to go get a jar of pickles from the store, and he was thinking like a little one, and I bought one. It was like legitimately this big. I bought the biggest one. I don't know where Dion would have gotten that from. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know because he live streamed with us on Saturday, and he goes, "Hey, when you do your live with Cody, bring up something about like this is such a pickle you're in."
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if it was Jason, then I'd be like, that makes sense because we have funny humor. But he also calls my cat Pickle, which is weird.
All right, all right.
He,
Well, so Flavio says this was great info. He's gonna have to watch it 3 or 4 times. So yeah, I hope people get a lot of good things out of this. Like I said, me and Cody are gonna talk a little bit after this. We're gonna do something on a regular basis. So we'll try to figure out what day that works. But I see Jen and Kenny tuning in, and they just came from Thatch's event over the weekend. Zuber was one of the speakers there. I know Thatch was offering a lot of courses at different price points. Um, Cody, I don't know if you ever joined any courses or signed up for any courses in the beginning part of your journey. Do you have any thoughts about people paying for courses or things?
I mean, if you have the money, it's fine for sure. I've always advocated, even when I used to have one a couple years ago, I always advocated you can find the stuff for free on YouTube. And so I would recommend doing that first. You don't have to buy it, you can research it. And if you want to be part of a community, absolutely, it can definitely be worth it. But I wouldn't go into debt. Like if I didn't have the money, I wouldn't go into debt to do a course. And I see people doing that, and that's a bummer. Like, well, this is going to be the thing that makes me take off. I'm like, well, you could have probably gotten that for free if you spent a few more hours researching.
Jen says Kenny's a sucker for infomercials. I will buy anything.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same opinion, Cody. I used to be really anti-course because I thought you could learn everything easily online, but I think a lot of the time the value in the course, if it's truly something where you're actually meeting with the people, it's not the actual information because you can find the information. Now, are they going to package the information really conveniently for you to learn it all quickly? Yes. But I think the real value add is if you're somebody that's been on the fence about buying a certain type of rental property, being able to have somebody there that can look over your shoulder and double check what you're doing or give you some advice when you have questions, that's the thing that makes the courses actually worth it to me. Whereas, I used to not be like, I used to think nobody should buy those. Now I'm like, you know what? If it makes it easier and you'll actually do it, I think it's worth it for you to buy it. Just like you said, don't go in debt for some of these courses. I've seen some crazy prices on some of these for real estate. Like, they'll get you on the two, three, $4,000 price point, and then they'll throw in something at that event that's like, oh well, if you pay 25,000, you can go to the real mastermind. It's like, well, okay, maybe we shouldn't sign up for all that.
Yeah, and the only reason, more so for the information, if you're gonna do it, you do it for the experience. Like, because not everybody online shares their actual experiences. They'll share parts of it, but intimate questions about, well, that didn't play out exactly how you expected it to. Why did it play out that way, and why do you, why do you think you got where you got? How did you overcome it? That type of stuff. If that's in the package, then it's a much more enticing offer, especially with ChatGPT now. I mean, you can prompt it to go based off of someone's YouTube page and then ask for summative points. It's ridiculous. And so I would only do it for the behind the door, closed door experience level info. And if it doesn't have that, you probably shouldn't do it.
Jen is asking you, Cody, any advice on how to look for mentors to ensure we are doing the right thing?
If you're calling people who own the type of properties or businesses that you want to own, and you're meeting with them more often than not, you're going to find a good mentor. You should take advice from people that have been through difficult times, and it hasn't all just been easy. And you should take advice from people that have done things that you want to do. Not just
Well,
people that have what you want, because the way they got it does not indicate that it's repeatable. But people that have been through difficult times and have done what you want to do, yeah, you should chat with those people, and you can find those people online. They're just property owners or business owners. It's pretty easy to find their contact info and give them a call.
Joe V brings up a good point. He says a low way to learn is Zuber's School, $20 a month. And Hyder does mention earlier he lost 4K, I believe, maybe on a mentorship or some course, but he does say buying what's free tends to be the fast track and provides accountability. When you pay, you stay. I do. Yeah. So Jen says this was somehow someone at the event that she came from presented it to her. It's like knowing how to play soccer. You can play okay, but you could play a lot better with a private coach. Dylan, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just think you have to be kind of careful because I do see a lot of these groups start to get really like I don't want to phrase it in the wrong way, but like they start to get obsessive over the central character of this marketing like whatever it is, whether it's a course or mentor or whatever. Um, you really want it to be somebody that's actually there to help you individually, not somebody that is simply just trying to sell something to you. And I think that's a huge delineation. I used to be in the internet marketing space, and I've seen a lot of people selling a lot of things that I wouldn't usually approve of people buying, and I didn't when I worked with a lot of those people. So yeah, I just think you have to be uber careful because they'll try to get you into a funnel and then keep funneling you down, spending more and more money. Um, just my opinion.
All right, and we'll wrap things up pretty soon. This was a really good one. Hopefully, next time we can figure out Cody's Wi-Fi and we can get him to walk through a property. I think that'll be super helpful. But Hyder does say, I eventually want to join Gammon, Hartman's, McElroy's group, the collective of for 50K annually. Wow, they do really fun quarterly meetups and share insider business opportunities. Well, you'll get a first-hand peek at Jason Hartman, who will be one of the keynote speakers at Zuber's event in February. And also kicking off day one will be Cody. Cody's kicking off day one, I believe. So everyone go get your tickets. Go check out Dylan's episode on Bigger Pockets Rookie that dropped today. And I think Cody tomorrow, right? Tomorrow you do Tuesday, Thursdays, right? You put out a video on your channel, right?
Yep.
Yep. So go check those out. And everyone, thanks for tuning in. I will be back live streaming same time tomorrow with Brandon, another speaker for the ORAD event, Build to Rent Texas. And he's going to be breaking down one of Dion's videos that Dion recently did. But tune in tomorrow. I'll see you folks tomorrow and have a great rest of the day.
All right.